I wanted to just understand from you guys what you thought about what the decision in November, which was to maintain output and not to cut production in order to bolster oil prices, which were falling last year. And this was seen to be a step that not many people expected. They thought these countries need the revenues, they will surely cut their production to ensure that prices go up, and their own revenues will be supported by this. But does the decision to maintain production and not cut, not cut in order to bolster prices, does that diminish their influence in terms of over the world, or does it actually make them more influential? Maybe Carol.
Yeah. Of course, when you have a low oil price environment and OPEC, usually when oil price goes down, we tend to expect OPEC to cut production because they're a major supplier, and once they remove a certain chunk of oil from the market, then the oil price reacts. But I kind of understand OPEC's decision because here, every now and then we have a new area opening up, advances in technology allowing access to new resources, which become later reserves. Think of the North Sea in the 60s and the 70s. The discovery of the North Sea, the development of the North Sea imposed tremendous challenge on OPEC. But then later, OPEC rose again, and it was able to maintain a certain level of control over the market. Now, today, people say that OPEC is over. I don't think so, because they are still providing more than 30% of, or even more than that, than total oil in the world. So they are definitely significant. And as Nia said, we have not just in terms of production, but in terms of cost of exploration and development and production. So we have the low-cost producers there. But I think that we have to think about it in two ways. Again, when we talk about market, it's demand and supply. Let me talk just like an economist. On the demand side, if oil prices are too high, what do? You end up changing your behavior, and it doesn't necessarily go back to your old habits when the oil prices go down. That's what we call structural destruction of the demand, which means that once I lose the demand, I lose it. That's it. I cannot regain it. And you don't want the oil price to go too high so that you don't face this kind of scenario. And I think that's perhaps one thing that OPEC had in mind, that they keep the oil price for now because like this the demand will pick up and we're going to see a revival. Maybe it did not happen as they hoped, but I already hear my colleagues telling me that we're seeing a growth in the demand much faster than the last 10 years average coming. On the supply side, they are dealing with a new beast. That's what, if you all heard of the shale oil revolution in the USA. It started with gas, now it is with oil. The shale oil technically is very different from the conventional oil, the traditional oil that we all know about, in a sense where we don't really have this oil accumulation in one reservoir. You drill a hole and the oil erupts certain pressure and you have this continuous production. There is no such a pressure. It's like a millefeuille cake. Oil is spread in shale and you need to simulate artificially that pressure, which kind of, although it increases your cost, but it gives you more control over the operation. So when the oil price is high, you go and you drill horizontal wells, you do the fracking, and you liberate that oil to come up. When the oil price is down, it doesn't make much sense. All what you need to do is drill those wells, but don't frack them. Wait until the oil price recovers. So we're not sure yet how will the shale respond when the oil price starts to increase. And again, OPEC does not know the answer yet. So it's a bit of uncertainty on both the demand and supply, but I wouldn't say that OPEC lost control over the market. It's too early to reach such a conclusion.
And if I could just add to that,
Sure.
I think I very much agree with what Carol says about the external challenges that led OPEC to make its decision. So essentially, supply elsewhere growing faster than demand. And it appears the early signs are that this lower price environment is rebalancing that, so that goal is working. But there was an internal challenge as well, which was one that Saudi Arabia, the dominant member in particular, saw, which was OPEC has always tried to work by collective action. They set a quota, they set a limit that they're going to produce oil to try and keep the market adequately supplied and, of course, to keep prices at a level they're happy with. But increasingly in recent years, the majority of members were disregarding that quota and were pumping as much oil as they physically could. So without that internal cohesion, OPEC, if it had made a decision and announced a cut in November last year, it probably wouldn't have been able to deliver that. or it would only have been able to deliver that by Saudi Arabia acting alone, which is what we saw in the 1980s when Saudi production went from around 8 million barrels a day down to about 3 million as they tried to defend a market price and an oversupplied market. So wary of that dynamic happening again and wary of the lack of cohesion within OPEC, that was, I think, a big factor in the decision. And the question mark for me, even more than will the external market rebalance because of lower prices, is can the internal group become cohesive and begin to act more collectively together. And unless they can do that, they're I think that will be the reason that OPEC could become less influential in the future.